We are standing in an absolutely amazing site. This is a small tributary of the Burnt River in the Burnt River Canyon in southern Blue Mountains of Oregon. This is an area that is true desert, 10 to 12 inches of annual precipitation. And I want to share with you about talus slopes. Talus slopes are all the rock that has chipped off due to freezing and thawing, and it is an outstanding spot for many animals and insects to take refuge during the heat of the day. And right now it's probably 90 degrees where we are, and we're not seeing any lizards or snakes or small rodents, but they're up under the rocks in the talus slope. And this evening they'll come out. Talus slopes also do something else, and that is when it rains, water runs off the talus slopes to the edges and to the bottom of the slope. And this provides moisture in an area that normally wouldn't have an accumulation of moisture, and that allows a lot of woody shrubs to grow along the immediate edge of a talus slope, as well as a lot of forbs and grasses, which is very important to wildlife for forage base, and it also attracts large numbers of insects. I'm standing here in this gorgeous spot and looking at this amazing talus slope in front of me. And the thing that is truly interesting is that the north and east facing slopes have deeper soils, just like the rest of the Blue Mountains. And the south and west facing slopes are very shallow soiled and dry and rocky. Many more plants and higher diversity on the east and north facing slopes, and less diversity on the south and west facing slopes. So even here, a good 130, 140 miles from the central Blue Mountains, we still are experiencing that coverage of soil in the blues. This is the desert end of the Blue Mountains. And because this is a whole series on the deserts of the Pacific Northwest, we figured we would start right in this area because it is a true desert here in Oregon. Another amazing thing is that talus slopes add talus. And so over the years, more and more rock falls off from above on the cliff faces and the basalt rims and falls, and that talus begins to build up. And as it does that, it creates more and more cavities and areas for animals to get out of the sun or out of the snow and cold. So the average daily temperature inside talus under the rocks is much more stable and cooler than if those animals were out from under it. So very important. Today we were able to find and photograph a beautiful Becker's white, which is a native white, which is a family of butterflies. And it was nectaring on Jim Hill mustard or tumble mustard. And it's an absolutely beautiful butterfly that only flies during the heat of the summer. Most people just see them as a white butterfly ripping through past you, and they seldom get a good look at them. But they are truly an amazing insect. The whites include many species of butterflies here in the Pacific Northwest, especially in desert areas. So we will be bringing more whites, members of the white family, to your view. Another butterfly that was there was the cabbage butterfly, which is not native to North America, was introduced from Western Europe. And it has spread all over the country. It's very common. Even in these isolated desert areas, cabbage butterflies are everywhere. We have another plant which all these butterflies were attracted to, and that's Jim Hill mustard, which is a non-native from Asia. and it produces all kinds of small yellow flowers that our native bees and wasps and butterflies thoroughly enjoy and nectar off of. And despite not being a native plant, it has allowed itself to grow everywhere in the western United States. Lots of people call it tumble mustard or tumbleweed, but it's really a mustard. And it is absolutely imperative in some areas that it grow for insects to pollinate. We're right here, standing in one of my all-time favorite types of habitat. This is the Great Eastern Oregon Shrub-steppe Desert. It's dominated by sagebrush of several species, but it has hundreds and hundreds of other native plants that live here. And right now, dozens of forbs are blooming, and they are absolutely gorgeous. Some of these are cream buckwheat, which has very short leaves, but the flower heads stand about a foot off the ground, and it provides a huge pollinating opportunity for many bees, bumblebees, and wasps. Lots and lots of butterflies also pollinate on buckwheats. Another buckwheat is the ball buckwheat, which has very, very short leaves, about a 5-inch stem and a round ball of flowers on the end. And these ball buckwheat are a true desert plant. They bloom once a year, few flowering heads, that's it. There's also lupin here, which is just this beautiful blue, and it's all around me here. Sagebrush has already started with its buds. It's not flowered by any means, but they're starting to develop. We have wavy leaf thistle, which is a native thistle, and in this area, it's white. The bloom is white. And up further to the north into eastern Washington, the bloom is a delicate lavender pink. So very different, but the same species. And then down here also is bull thistle, which is dark purple, gorgeous thistle. And it is a favorite of native bumblebees, which visit it all day long. And as time passes during the day, the plant continues to produce nectar to attract bumblebees to it so that they pollinate the plant. Thistles are very, very important to many finch species of birds. And they are important because that's what the finches feed on. After the thistle has gone to seed, they eat the seed of that plant. So very important. Another plant that is out here on rocky, hot faces that face to the west and south is Curl-leaf Mountain Mahogany. This is one of the toughest native trees we have in Oregon. It is a plant that can withstand 120 plus degree temperatures when it grows out of a rock and virtually no water. And in many places, Curl-leaf Mountain Mahogany will grow in sites where there's 6 inches to 8 inches of annual precipitation. So amazing plant. And some of them get huge, but they also grow very, very slowly, and their wood is extremely hard. And they're not a plant that most people can plant and have it grow. So amazing to see them in huge numbers on rocky, hot sites. Another plant that's in this area is Mariposa lily. Absolutely gorgeous native lily. It grows up every year from a bulb, and it produces this absolutely gorgeous purple bloom. I would urge you, if you go out and take a walk in the sage and you find them, don't pick them because it destroys that plant. They are well used by native pollinators, and they stand about a foot off the ground. Really interesting plant. So this area this year had a lot of rain and snow early in the spring, and it has allowed this whole area to bloom and produce incredible numbers of flowers. And it's been well worth the visit. So right behind me here is a plant, a woody shrub native to this area called the golden currant. And golden currants produce beautiful flowers early in the spring, of which the early emerging native bumblebees pollinate. An other pollinator also arrives on the scene, and that is in late April, it's hummingbirds, like calliope hummingbirds and black-chin, and they come up, pollinate that golden currant flower, and then we get the golden currant berries. And many, many bird species rely on these berries to feed their young and they themselves. And golden currants also act as thermal cover, even within the sagebrush, because they're much thicker than the sage is. And very valuable plant. And they're scattered all along areas where water flows. So just a few minutes ago, while we were getting ready to come and shoot this, we had a male mountain bluebird pop up on a fence post. And they are one of the most beautiful North American birds that we have here. And they nest all over the higher elevations within the Great Basin Desert, and that is where we are. And these male mountain bluebirds are covered with blue, and they have a white belly. And the blue has no pigment. It's all refracted light from the sun. And they just glow a beautiful, beautiful sky blue. And they are an insectivore during the summer and the spring. And then they start eating berries and fruits in the winter. So really an interesting species. They're a cavity nester. So they lay all 4 eggs inside a cavity, either excavated by a woodpecker, or they take bluebird boxes that people build, and they will raise 4 young, and they are very successful parents. So absolutely gorgeous bird, and I would expect them at high elevations like we're at now. We have arrived at Malheur City, which is in northern Malheur County, Oregon, in a beautiful mountainous area that is entirely covered with shrub-steppe or sagebrush and many, many species of forbs and grasses. This old city is all but gone. It burned down, and only parts that remain are those that were built of stone. And as you look around, you find that there were stone entrances to homes and all kinds of stone potato cellars and lots of designs made out of the local stone. This was a city that once had 15 to 1,800 people. It was a very, very active community. And it was there because of the gold and mining that was going on in the area. And they also raised cattle and sheep. This area is now been taken back over by the shrub-steppe community, and a few of the stone structures still stand. The interesting thing is that in many of the areas that once were hustling and bustling with human activity, you would never know it, because Mother Nature is incredibly resilient. And the area is completely covered with old stand of sagebrush and lots of flowers. This evening, we are out looking for scorpions. And there's a very, very special way that you go looking for scorpions, and that is you have to wait till after dark. And then you get a UV light, go out and shine it on the ground, and the most amazing thing happens, and that is that scorpions luminesce under UV light. and you get great looks at these scorpions. Now the species of scorpion we are looking for is only about an inch, inch and a quarter long. I was shining the UV light around and found one sitting on a rock. It was an exciting experience. And the reason is because most people this day and age never see a scorpion. And this particular species of scorpion is, as I said, very small, about an inch, inch and a quarter. But they are a serious predator, and they live under the rocks. And they live under the rocks because they get predated by all kinds of rodents and other mammals that eat them. So they are very careful where they come up onto the surface at the end of the day. This scorpion we actually found 3 of them, are absolutely beautiful and incredible to watch. I'm standing under one of the most iconic trees of Western North America, and this is a desert-dwelling tree called the Western juniper. It's a very, very important plant to the ecology of the area in which it lives. Many, many people know very little about the Western juniper, and the thing about it is that it is so important to wildlife and to insects and to all kinds of animals, and we'll go through this. Western junipers grow in very arid areas, and they are the climatic end to a series of plant communities. So it starts out with grasses and rabbit brush and sagebrush, and then bitterbrush and sagebrush, and then junipers start to grow. And at the very end of that series of communities, the Western juniper is the climax of that community. Western junipers are very important to all kinds of animals. So we'll talk about 3. One is the Pacific chorus frog, which most people would never associate with Western juniper. It actually climbs the tree and goes into cracks and crevices and hollow dead branches in the tree, and it spends a lot of the summer in those dry areas outside of the desiccating sunlight. Big dead branches in junipers provide incredible hibernaculum for bats. Many, many bat species utilize juniper trees, especially old junipers. Some spend the winter in them, others use them to raise their young. So bats, amphibians, and the other one are several species of lizards that utilize Western juniper all the time. But the other important thing is Western junipers are a platform on which birds like ravens, ferruginous hawk, golden eagle, red-tailed hawks, and Swainson's hawks all build their nests in. And without these platforms, these birds would be in much worse trouble than they are. The other interesting thing is many, many songbirds utilize Western juniper, both to feed on insects from and to nest in. Western junipers are a plant that are able to attain 150, 200 years old. And so they can be extremely old. And the older they get, the more gnarled, the more cavities they have in them, and the more important they become. Now there are a lot of landowners that don't like western juniper. And they don't like it because it does not allow any other trees or much grass to grow under the tree. And that's because the soil becomes acidified. So they cut them down and burn them, and they do anything they can to get rid of them, which is really unfortunate because they are so valuable. Many, many western juniper forests are alive with wildlife, and they are a community that are absolutely enjoyable to come and listen to and understand. The other thing is the western juniper berry. The juniper berries actually are utilized by many human beings, and they make alcohol out of it. But many animals utilize the berries. There are many bird species like western bluebirds, mountain bluebirds, cedar waxwings, robins, coyotes, all kinds of animals eat these berries in the winter, and that's what allows them to survive. They get bulk in their stomach. And junipers are full of tannic acid, which you would think would stop most animals from feeding on them. Doesn't faze them. They enjoy the berries, eat them like mad. So the berries are very important. The shade that the big juniper trees provide is very important, especially in hot, arid areas where they grow. And some other important things is that they grow in areas that a lot of wildlife like mule deer and elk summer. And so they spend a lot of time under juniper trees. The other animal that we're talking about here is the birds that utilize this area. Right now, as we're recording this, you can hear a yellow-breasted chat calling, and he's down in the riparian area behind me. But the junipers have grown right up to the edge of this riparian area. And it's just perfect for them because it's not too wet and it's not too dry, and they do very well here. We are standing here along the North Fork of the Malheur River in Malheur County, Oregon. And this is a desert river. It flows through some of the most inhospitable, driest desert imaginable. 8 to 10 inch precip annually. But the Malheur River is a course that brings life to this huge area. And some of the plants that we've been looking at, and you will see, are the poison oak, which grows here in big, thick clumps. And poison oak is really important to a lot of birds because of the insects it attracts and the berries it produces. And despite its horrible effect on many human beings, it is part of the system. And as part of the system, it provides all kinds of sustenance to many insect species. The other plant that's here in large numbers are clematis, our native wild clematis, which is a vine. And it has the most beautiful complex flowers that loads of insects come to pollinate and nectar on. And keep in mind that insects don't come to a plant to intentionally pollinate it. They come to get the nectar. And the nectar is the come-on to cause them to pick up pollen grains from that flower and move to the next one, and that pollinates that plant. So one of the great pollinators we look at today is the ruddy copper, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous butterfly, a beautiful native butterfly. That is not real big. When it's wide open, it's about 1 inch across, but the color of the dorsal surface is this ruddy red, absolutely beautiful. And you will get to see a female and a male ruddy copper. And another one we found was a gray hair streak, which is another beautiful small butterfly. And then there were all kinds of other plants like poison hemlock was there, and big clumps of stinging nettle. And the stinging nettle is a native, and many people hate stinging nettle because they get stung. But the important thing is that stinging nettle is a food plant for several species of butterflies. They lay their eggs on it, and that's what their caterpillars or instars feed on. So stinging nettle is part of the big picture and very important in the overall design of things. So very, very important. Another thing that's very interesting is that in the riparian areas along this river, the riparian areas are very thin margined, which means they're not very wide. And that's because the Malheur River does not flood all that often. And therefore its water pretty much stays in the bed that it's currently riding. So a lot of area next to the river does not get a lot of water, except in extreme high water years with rain or a heavy snow melt. The riparian zones in all of the Pacific Northwest, especially through desert areas, are super important. And we know that over 80% of the animals have some portion of the cycle of their life in a riparian zone. So they're very, very important.